Okay, hello everyone. So let's take 1 or 2 more minutes for participants to enter the webinar room. Yeah, so the number is increasing quickly. In the meantime, let me share my screen as well. Good, so we have so far 37 participants, and it seems the increase in number has been now steady. So yeah, it's still increasing, so just a few more seconds. Ah, it's growing. Okay, so we have 44 participants. Oh, it's increasing, but we'll get started now. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. So I welcome you all to this panel discussion organized by Junior Faculty Interest Group. So before we get started, let me just spend a minute or two to tell you what is JFIG, if in case you are not familiar with it. So JFIG was created in 2001 to promote the career development of tenure track faculty. And here is the team or the officers of JFIG. Some of the signature events of JFIG includes Junior Faculty Paper Competition, informs Junior Faculty or JFIG Luncheon, and we have been organizing some panel discussions in past. So in past, we have organized panel discussion on publication and review process, impact of race and culture related issues on career of junior faculty, industry-funded research and projects, medical and clinical collaborations in healthcare. So videos of these events are available through Inform's YouTube channel. So if you were not able to make it, you can watch them there. Today, I would like to welcome you all for a panel discussion on From Finding Funding Opportunities to Career Awards, a guide for junior faculty. This event is sponsored by Virginia Tech College of Engineering, Grado Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering, Systems and Industrial Engineering Department of University of Arizona, Industrial and Operations Engineering Department of University of Michigan, and Operations Management and Statistics area of Rotman School of Management, University of Toronto. Now, I would like to invite my fellow moderator and co-chairs of this session, Albert from University of Michigan and Raghu from University of Texas, Austin, who will introduce our illustrious panelists.
Thank you so much, Manish. Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I'm Albert Brajas, and it's my great pleasure to introduce the panelists today. We have a great lineup of panelists that have agreed to talk to us about their experiences with grant writing. So I will be introducing the panelists in the order that they will be presenting. So first up, we have Professor Eunhye Song. So Professor Song is the Harold and Ing Marcus Early Career Assistant Professor in the Department of Industrial and Manufacturing Engineering at Penn State. Our second panelist is Professor Divya Srinivasan, who is the McQueen Quantelbaum Professor of Industrial Engineering at Clemson University. Our third panelist is Dr. Irina Dolinskaya, who is the Program Director at NSF in the Division of Civil, Mechanical, and Manufacturing Innovation. And last but not least, Professor Larry Seiford from the Department of Industrial and Operations Research Engineering at the University of Michigan. I would like to thank the panelists once again for agreeing to serve on this Informed JFIG panel. I look forward to all the presentations and the discussion. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our first panelist, Professor Eunhye Song. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Albert. Can you guys see my screen? Good. All right. Thanks everyone for organizing this event. When I was first invited, I was a little bit hesitant to accept this invitation because I'm not the most, by far, not the most successful person in terms of securing grants as a junior faculty, but this is one sample path that I took, and I hope that this will be helpful for some of the audience today here. Okay, so the title of this is a personal take on NSF career grant application. So before I jump on, I would like to talk a little bit about myself. So I graduated back in 2017 from Northwestern University, IMS, and joined Penn State as an assistant professor. And my research focus is simulation analysis. So I mostly work on experiment design and algorithm development. And in terms of the theoretical part, I do the efficiency or optimality analysis of the algorithm. And I'm less focused on domain-specific simulations such as infectious disease simulation, although I'm very interested in collaborating with those who are working in this area. So I also do have a few industry collaboration / outreach projects with General Motors, Simio, which is a software company in discrete event simulation software industry, and Center Lifelink EMS. So all of these entities actually provided me the letter of support when I applied for the career grant. And I was very fortunate to be awarded for 2 research grants, one from DMS, Division of Mathematical Science, and CMMI, and 1 workshop grant from the CMMI at from the NSF. So that was just a bit of a background story about myself, just to put everything together to make sense what I'm about to say. So here's the NSF funding timeline of what I have tried so far since I started my career back in 2017. So the first, when I joined the Penn State University, that was August of 2017. And the first thing that I did was I submitted a grant proposal to OE department. And unfortunately, this was actually returned without review. And the review that I got was that, or the comment that I got was that the grant proposal was not really suitable for the objective of the program itself, because OE was pursuing something that is more application, I wouldn't want to say application oriented, but it's a clear benefit to the application areas, and that has not been very clear in my first proposal. So that was the comment that I got. And in the next cycle, back then also there was a deadline for the grant application. So I decided to submit again with the collaborators. And the next time I submitted was January 2018, and this was also rejected. So the reason was, again, similar to the first comment, although this time it was reviewed. But all the other comments on the methodological aspect of the grant was actually quite positive. So that actually gave me some hope that this was actually going to be funded eventually. So at this point, my other collaborators were actually a little bit hesitant to try again. So I also agreed that maybe OE wasn't a good venue for this particular grant, because this was on theoretical development of a simulation optimization algorithm on the high dimensional space. And we decided to look for other programs. So at this point, what I discovered is that under the DMS division, there was a program called CDSNE, and this is related to the computational statistics topic. So I spoke to the program manager of that program before I actually submitted this proposal to that program, because this was my first time submitting, and I didn't really have many experiences with the DMS division. So the program director was actually very encouraging, and he agreed to actually speak to me on the phone. So we did talk about, the pros and cons of this particular proposal that I have in terms of targeting CDSNE, and that was actually very helpful. So incorporating those comments, and we had that conversation about like 3 weeks before the due, and so that was also very last minute, but I was very grateful for that to happen also. And by the September, I submitted the revised grant, and fortunately, this was actually funded in 2019 July. So this actually gave me a lot of relief, as you guys can probably guess, because this was my first grant as a junior faculty. And I felt that I was, at this point, I had the full spectrum of experiences from rejection to being accepted. So I was quite confident that I was ready for me to start writing the career grant. So this is when I first started writing or thinking about putting together the career grant in 2019, which may be a little bit later than most other people are doing, depending on, some people prefer to start writing the career grant as the first grant. But for me, I wanted to accumulate the experiences first before I try my career grant. So the career proposal submission was due August 2020 on that year. So this was when I first submitted my grant, and the funding decision was made on 2021, April, officially. And I was fortunate to be awarded by OE for my career grant. So in the process of doing that, there were two events that I want to highlight. So first one that was actually very helpful for me. So the first one was that I attended the NSF CMMI career workshop back in 2018, March. And that was actually very, very helpful. And I know that they have suspended this since the COVID time. However, I could actually meet with a bunch of program directors under the CMMI division and talk about their perspectives on career grants. And I could also participate in the mock panel. And that was actually very, very helpful to see all the proposals that were funded and not funded at the same time. And I actually served on an NSF panel in early 2020, and that was also tremendously helpful for me to see what's actually going on at the panel discussion. So specifically about the career preparation, so this was my timeline. So when I attended the workshop that I just mentioned, the career workshop, I was able to actually meet with the OE program director and pitched my career idea. So I could actually get the immediate first reaction from the program director, and that was very helpful for me to think about what other aspects that I have to look into for this to be funded. And so first time, as I said, when I started putting together the career grant or the actual specific ideas for the career grant was 2019. And I didn't want to just start writing the grant without any preliminary results. So this is when I actually started collecting the preliminary results in the sense that I wrote papers or journal papers or conference papers that can be served as the preliminary results for my career grant. So by September 2019, I had some results for my tests 2 and 3 of the career proposal, and that December I had some results for the task 1. And also I wanted to run some preliminary run for the educational program as well. So this on the same year, January of the year that I submitted the career proposal, I started running this small educational program with the undergraduate students at Penn State University for targeting the high school students in the area. So when I started actually writing the grant was April 2020. So and then I spent a three-month writing the grant actually, and then one thing that I promised to myself was that because the due was August, I wanted to finish writing by July latest, so July 1st. And then I was going to solicit feedback from mentors. So I chose 6 different mentors in all different areas of operations research or operations engineering in general to solicit feedback. So these are people ranging from simulation background as mine, or operations management, or supply chain, or healthcare, and data science, and et cetera, et cetera. So these people were very, very, very helpful for me to get the different perspectives in the OR area, because when I'm writing the paper, I'm actually writing to my target audience, but from this experience, I could actually see the way that I'm pitching my idea is maybe not suitable for the more general or enough and the audience, because your career grant panel is going to be actually quite mixed. So because I gave myself enough time for the revision, so I was actually very comfortable revising and collecting their input by the second week of July, let's say, and then I was able to incorporate their comments into my career grant. And so when I submitted the career grant proposal in August, it was actually very helpful and very different from my initial draft that I sent out to my mentors. Okay, so that was about the preparation timeline. So here are some comments that I would like to make in terms of my take on NSF career proposal writing. So some of these are actually the advice that I got from other people when I was putting together mine. So for example, this one, so I need to show my evidence that my research and teaching goals are really achievable in 5 years. And I am the best person to do so. So this is one of these advice that I found very helpful. And also the other advice that I got was that to talk about the 10-year career goals, not just about the 5-year goal, because the career is funded for 5 years, and how this career grant will help you achieve them. So educational plans should not be the afterthought, and it's really better to start a preliminary program before you write the career proposals to show the evidence that you have some really tangible plans to show the success. And industry collaborator letters, as I said at the beginning, were very effective for me to show my impact of my research. Another thing was that the audience is very broad. It's not just usual research community, so it's really good to get those perspectives from mentors from broad areas of OR. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go quickly. So some of the recommendations that I would like to give are the serving on the panel or mock panel. So this will really give you a different perspective sitting on the other side of the panel review. And the write the NSF proposals with others to learn really about the art of proposal writing was helpful for me before writing my own career grant. And you can always reach out to your program director and get the initial feedback, even though it may be a few years earlier than when you actually submit your career grant. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it was for me to solicit feedback from the broad informs community. So with that, I think I'm going way over time. So thank you everyone for your patience. And I would like to give the floor back to Albert.
Thank you so much, Eunhye. So we'll move on to our next speaker, Professor Srinivasan.
So while the slides are being placed, so we are receiving some questions. So please keep on sending your questions through Q&A window. We will be addressing, asking your questions to the panelists at the end of all the presentations.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen okay? All right. I also felt a little bit nervous like Eunhye when I was asked to talk in this panel, primarily because I'm not from the OR community. So I'll take 1 minute to talk about a little bit about myself, and then I'll go straight in. My name is Divya. I'm from Clemson University. I work on modeling human movement behaviors and biomechanics. I'm from the human factors side of industrial engineering. Why do I do what I do? I like to apply them to solve problems that revolve around improving human performance, health, and safety across diverse occupational applications. My brush with the NSF and probably why I'm here today to talk to you all is that I currently serve as PI on 2 NSF Future of Work projects, and one project from the Mind Machine Motor program, which is in my community within CMMI. And I'm also a co-PI on some other projects through Leap High, Leading Engineering for America's Prosperity, Health, and Infrastructure. I practiced this before today. NRI, the Convergence Accelerator, and also a Partnership for Innovation project. So I am much more kinder to myself than Dr. Song, who went before me. I did not list everything that I tried and failed at. I only listed the things that worked out. So I don't have as organized a plan as what she showed you, but I have some random ramblings I'll take you through. Albert, please stop me when my time is up. I can stop anywhere on this line. Okay, so I'm sort of focusing on the things that I found the hardest to sort of figure out while I was writing proposals. And the first part of it is, how do you even commit to an idea to decide that you're going to write 15 pages about it, right? So I'm taking you through that a little bit here. So forming an initial idea, we all walk around with several ideas, but that's only the first part of the problem. I mean, that's maybe halfway there. The rest of the way, I think, is really key, is to figure out where it's going to get applied. So while you can have many ideas that you love to work on, sort of answering the who cares and the so what questions become very important. And here, I think there are two steps, right? One is developing your core idea further. The second is finding a program to fit your ideas. And this can be done in any order. So you might have a core idea that could apply to maybe 4 programs that you looked at that look interesting right now. And here is where some crafting is required. You could either modify your idea a little bit to align with one of those programs, or you could say, this is exactly what I want to do, and then find a program that fits that idea. At this point, crafting the proposal is a little bit like cooking a new dish. So everybody has a different recipe to it. But in my experience, in answering the who cares and the so what questions, it's very useful to reach out to the people who do not see it from your small bubble, from your disciplinary perspective alone. So just like Dr. Song said, try to present your thoughts to people at the periphery of your field, smart people from even outside your core research field, or industry experts, or somebody who can help you answer the who cares question, right? And I think there is a common misconception here that some people who do theoretical work may feel overwhelmed that I can't do everything from, coming up with new theory to applying it to solve a problem. And I don't think every proposal requires that you have solved an applied problem. If you can even show your reviewers that you have thought about what steps can be taken to go from the work you're proposing to how it can actually get applied without making any like fantasy leaps of faith, that I think will fetch you some amazing credit. So that I think is the second part. And then comes the third part where you sort of have to decide, what do I not know? Who am I going to have on my team, right? And this has been, in my experience, this has been the hardest for me to do. We're all faculty in the room, which means we live in our own beautiful bubbles, and most of us have giant egos. So if you don't know something, how do you even find out that you don't know it? And worse still, how do you sort of come to this realization that you need it for your proposal? And a side note here is, if the answer to your question for what do I not know is that nothing, then you should probably not be writing an interdisciplinary proposal. So yeah, I mean, take advices from your program directors if you can get them. Maybe the answers to the previous questions on how you align yourself to the program or what you develop further will help you get some answers to this question. I had also found it very useful to go through the prior awards that have been funded by the specific program I'm reaching out to see what scope of collaborations existed in successful proposals. So talk to people, try to find answers to that question. And I think the last step here is really committing to the idea, right? So coming up with research questions that you came up with, not just as yourself in this initial step where you formed the initial idea, but sitting together with your team and trying to decide, these are what we are going to go about answering. And once you do that, maybe you want to still take a step back before you go in to write the proposal, because your questions may have gotten larger because you involved other people in the team now. They may have gotten slightly different because you try to align yourself to a specific program, but they shouldn't have fundamentally changed so much that you're not excited about them anymore. So make sure that they still make sense to you, and then ask yourself the very hard question of why are you the best person to lead this work in the form that it's currently taken? Everybody in the world is going to ask that question. So I think answering that question for yourself would be a critical step before moving on. There are numerous resources and workshops about how to write good proposals. So I'm not really going into details here, but please don't underestimate the power of good storytelling. The solicitation is super useful. I find myself being able to organize my proposal really well based on the things that are listed in the solicitation. Yes, people really get annoyed when we use too many jargons and our writing is generally unreadable. So that's all true, no matter how many times you hear it. For me, I have found it very useful and actually very attractive in proposals when I've served on panels to have a good picture within, like, the first 1 or 2 pages that conveys your thinking in some way. Could be like a conceptual map of how your research questions come together, something cool that is scientific, or your rationale, or show an example application of how your theory would help solve a problem in some field. Maybe how you're going to integrate your research and educational activities, something to draw the reviewers in and want to read your proposal when it gets deep and methodological, they should have committed to reading your proposal, right? So this is your chance to draw them in, is how I feel. On a more general note, one thing that I have found very difficult to resolve for myself is we write proposals sometimes for 300K and sometimes we write proposals for 3 million. How do we scope them, right? I mean, is a larger proposal supposed to contain 10 times the scope of something smaller? And again, everybody will have a different take on this. My take is that I don't break up my research into 25 different portions just because it's a large proposal. I never, in fact, break up my proposed work into more than 3 research themes or 3 research questions. I think the ambition and the scope of each question will depend on the size of the proposed effort, but we still have the same 15 pages and the same amount of finite attention from our reviewers. So for me, it's been useful to ask how different disciplines in a proposal don't go off with their own research question, but how people can be brought to the table and made to talk to each other within each research question where you're embedding that interdisciplinarity. And I also like to give simple examples of how that will work out in the proposal itself. I will go on because I realize I'm actually talking a lot more than I intended to. As a PI, if you're doing an interdisciplinary proposal, I still think that you are probably going to take your vision of what the proposal should have to your team before people start writing their own sections. So what you're presenting to the panel at the end of the day is your version, your vision of the entire effort. The proposal may actually look different if different PIs had been the lead PI, but given that you're lead PI, this is your chance to tell your story and why you think this work is important and what it contains. So just use that confidently. And the interdisciplinarity of the work shouldn't come out in just the intellectual merit. Broader impacts are just as important. So do that, and everybody will tell you this, that your proposal should not look like 5 different people have carved out different sections of the pie. So make sure that you take everything back and make it read like one person or one group of people wrote it all as an effort that came together. And probably did I run over my time, Albert?
So you're
Yes.
almost at time.
I'm almost in time. Okay, then I'll stop here with this note. I think I wanted to go from not like a career proposal, but more from if you wanted to apply to one of these larger programs at NSF where you're forced to work with people from other fields, what do you do? So that's the line I've been taking so far. So you can't understand the methodological details and the intricacies of everybody's field, but if you're going to lead a proposal like that, I think understanding why everybody is doing what they're doing and at least putting in the effort to have a common language within your team is super important by the time you write your proposal. So like Dr. Song's timeline, you can write the proposal in probably 2 to 3 months, but the homework you're going to do before writing the proposal is what I've been highlighting today. And with that, I will stop and turn it over to Albert. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we'll move on to our next speaker, Dr. Dolinskaya.
Great, thank you. Albert, I saw you were being too kind, so I'm actually gonna start a timer for 8 minutes and see what happens when it rings if I stop talking. I'm really excited to follow Dr. Song, Dr. Srinivasan, because I feel like they already touched on a lot of great things that I was gonna talk on. So I'm just gonna build on that and maybe add a little bit from perspective from the program directors. And the topic that I really wanted to focus on is kind of what makes a good proposal, especially how to scope it, because once you, and Divya, you did a phenomenal job of kind of talking through that, a lot of it, and really thinking about how to frame it, how to scope it, because that is important once you then have to decide what program to go to and how to find this match. And as Divya suggested, it's kind of a little bit back and forth feedback, deciding the right program. So what I've seen, kind of the most, I don't want to say common mistake, but what I've seen really a lot of PIs struggling, especially those who don't have as much experience, or kind of relatively new to the academic or research world, the grant writing world, is a lot of initial ideas that they come to talk to me as a program director, they're more focused on delivering a product or an outcome of their project rather than what is the new knowledge that we are going to learn or we need to learn to be able to solve that problem. For example, your project might be, I want to come up with a kind of new scheduling approach for, let's say, non-governmental organizations distribute relief supplies. And then a lot of people focus on that. They're focusing on the deliverable. They're focusing on actually what tool am I going to deliver to come up with this scheduling problem, right? Or how do I improve efficiency of a reliable self-driving car? And they might be working on that specific product, and that's fine. But what happens when you structure, when you spend 15 pages talking about that, what you want, and that might work well for what we call mission agencies. So if you go to Department of Defense, if you go to Department of Health, right? If you go to those various kind of agencies that have specific mission, it's their mission to advance capabilities of a healthcare system or, underwater, submarines, whatever that is, that would work. For the National Science Foundation, we advance science and discovery. So for the NSF proposal, it's great to have motivation, but what we really fund and what we really, you as a researcher need to have very clear idea and then communicate in the proposal is that what new knowledge, what don't we know, right? Exactly what we said before, to be able to answer that question. And once you know what we don't know, then you write proposal not on optimal vehicle routing for food distribution, but you're writing on adaptive decision making for this specific. You abstract it away from this very specific application that you ultimately are trying to do. Okay, and the important part of that, once you're able to do that, that will tell you what program is the best program within NSF to fund this research. Because when we look at it, when people send us one page or kind of, here's my research idea, what we're looking for is really, where are you advancing the state of the art, right? So for example, self-driving, efficient self-driving cars. Well, you might be coming up with new control strategies. We have a program for that. You might be coming up with new computer vision that needs to enable that. We have a program for that. You might be coming up with advanced algorithmics to be able to make decisions in real time. We have a different program for that. New sensors, right? There's so many different, so if you come to me and saying, I'm working on self-driving cars, I'm not going to be able to tell you what program is the best. You're not going to be able to clearly communicate to the reviewers what is the best program. Because at NSF, we advance the science. So what I really recommend PIs to do is that if you're thinking of a problem you have in mind, start by, think of it, giving it to your first year, master's student. And kind of is starting to put together the pieces, or maybe a great senior designer. Maybe you have an outstanding undergraduate student. Get them start working, doing some literature review, and see if they can start kind of pulling the pieces together of how to solve this problem that motivated you using existing literature, right? And if they come back to you and say, okay, well, I know we're doing vehicle routing, but I found something for, other aspects. I can pull it all together. And I think if we adjust this for this, this is how we're going to solve it. If a first-year PhD student, after a couple of months, comes back to you with that, that is not a research question, right? There is nothing there. It's a great consulting project, right? It's a great senior design project, maybe even some master type of project, but it's not a research that NSF is going to fund. What you really want them to do is come back and say, okay, I was able to do this and this and this, but no one that I can see really tackled interdependence of uncertainties in the information coming in. I'm making up gibberish, right? And this is the part that I cannot figure it out. You sit with the student, you kind of look together and like, wow, this is really the challenge. Now, that is your proposal. Your proposal is how to advance, how to account for interdependency of information in a certain environment, whatever that is, right? So then now that this is where you're advancing the knowledge, and this is where you should be now talking to the program directors to figure out what is really the right program for that. Okay, so kind of think about it again, not necessarily everybody has a PhD student, first year PhD student just sitting there doing it, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how to think about, how to go about to figuring out what good scope makes for the project. The other question I get a lot is kind of, and previous speakers talked a little bit about, like, do I make it too broad? Do I make it too narrow? I saw some questions about multiple PIs versus single PI. I think a good way to think about it, if it's a project that will fund one or two PIs and fund one graduate student for, let's say, 3 or 4 years, what you're really doing is that this will be the students, ideally, a PhD thesis, right? So what do you need for PhD thesis? You need 3 papers, 3 kind of chapters. They need to be kind of related. The first one you probably have a good idea. The third one, you're not quite sure exactly what it's going to be, but you kind of see the track. So that is a good rule of thumb to keep in mind as you're putting together this proposal. That is something, and again, that will be a service to you once you actually get the award and get the grad student. You kind of now have almost like a plan for them to follow. Of course, it's going to deviate. It's research. It deviates all the time. Okay, but that's really kind of the scope. The other question that I've seen already kind of in the evaluations coming in as well is, let me talk about kind of single PI versus multiple PIs. Think about what is the right team you need to do this work. I do want to clarify one myth that I feel like a lot of people have, is that some people feel that if they're junior faculty, they need to have that senior name as a co-PI for them to get funded. That is absolutely a myth, okay? In fact, if that senior PI, co-PI, does not really intellectually fit what the needs are of that project, that's gonna hurt your project, okay? NSF is very excited about funding more junior, first time, or kind of, up and coming researchers. So whenever we see proposals coming in with a senior researcher, again, doesn't mean you shouldn't collaborate with the seniors, right? Like, just make sure, and it doesn't matter whether senior or junior. All it really matters is that you build the team that makes sense for your project. So if you're doing human-robot collaboration, you're robot experts, but not the human aspect of it, you better have a human expert on it, right? But don't bring in the people just because you happen to know the name. My time ran out, and I'm gonna stop now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irina. So last but not least, we have Professor Seiford.
So everybody can see my screen, I assume. So welcome, I'm Larry Seiford. I know you multitaskers out there are working on email, eating lunch, and trying to listen to this webinar. So my first question is, why listen to me? If you've read my bio, like Judy Collins, like the Judy Collins song, I've looked at both sides now. So let's talk about illusions and my provocative subtitle that I have there. So most of you think that you should start by writing a career proposal, but I want to start with you. So who are you? What are your expertise, your interests, your career, your life goals, your particular position at present, the resources you have? There are hundreds of you out there, and all are going to be trying to submit career proposals. So how do you tell the reviewers who you are? What window do they see into, and why do they care? And the answer is they see into your soul through your career proposal. And I would say, don't just start by writing a career proposal. You really need to start by writing a career plan or a life plan, envisioning what the next 30 years look like, your research goals, whether you're going to do a startup with some technology, how you're going to grow your center with 18 PhD students, et cetera. And after you write that career plan, then you go ahead and pull your career proposal out of it. And when you pull it out, threads of the career plan come with it, and the proposal reflects your life plan. And this is what gives you credibility in one sense. They look at you, they see they should invest in you because you're a mature researcher who knows where you're going. I'll come back to that a little later. So the next takeaway is I want you to step back and let's talk about funding. It's not simply enough to get money. It's not an end, it's a means to an end. And so if you think of the startup of you, then the natural analogy is the funding agencies are your VCs, your venture capitalists. So as an entrepreneur, you have many options for raising capital. You do need a credible business plan, and in your case, for the startup of you, that would be proposals. And if you're successful, great. If you're not, Well, you've heard other examples already of what you do. You try again. You go ahead and take the declined review and the reviews that came with it. You incorporate them. You submit again, and it's a new panel frequently next time, and it's interpreted differently. Or if you've tried that a couple of times and it doesn't work, you can always pivot to a new program, or instead of a greenhouse, you're describing a red house or whatever else. And sometimes it turns out this dog just won't hunt, and so it's best to go ahead and move on. It could be that you're too early, you're too late. It could be that you have a solution, but there's not a problem, but you move on. I would add that I value tenacity. Don't give up too soon. I can remember someone who's now a dean somewhere, when I called them up to tell them that their career award was going to be funded, they told me that that was the fourth time they had submitted that proposal. And after the third time it was declined, they almost gave up and said, no, I think I can polish it and do it a little better one last time. So I'm not saying keep submitting forever, but do go ahead and try several times. So going back to capital and to credibility, for capital, you have many VC options, and you've heard about a lot of these. NSF has many different pots of money. The organization is kind of like at your university, schools and colleges, and then departments, and then research areas, and you can find a particular research area, analytics or optimization or algorithms, across many departments, many colleges, et cetera. Well, at NSF, there's engineering, then the division of CMMII, and then operations engineering. But there are other places that go ahead and fund similar problems. So go back up the food chain and look around. There's also programs like GOLI, IUCRC, EPSCoR, SBIR that are other buckets of money and require something different. And just mentioning SBIR, all of federal funding agencies that give away money have to have an SBIR program, and that's an awful lot of money. So you can get funding from education, from energy, or whatever, through SBIR grants. And just because that's going to a company, that doesn't mean the company can't outsource the research back to the university and you as PI for the research. There's also private foundations, of course, there's industry, and there's internal funding sources at your university. The point is, all of these different pots, and there's more than you could probably get and spend in a lifetime, they all have different audiences. You have to write to the audience, as you've heard already. They have different processes, different requirements, expectations, different deliverables. So for a DoD, you might be reporting every quarter. And for NSF, they might give you the money and say, oh, just tell us what you're doing every year. But you have to understand the process you're getting into. In terms of credibility, the first step is you need to create a strong digital presence. You should have a professional website, LinkedIn page, because trust me, they are going to Google you. They have your proposal, but they will Google to go ahead and supplement information. Your proposal is their window. They look at that and try and decide whether you are going to be able, as you've heard, to accomplish the research. And it's not just about having a great problem statement. You actually need to write to the audience. It has to be aligned with the goals of the program. And in terms of your team, it's your team that actually gives you your credibility. If you don't have the expertise, it can take forever to learn it, or you can get somebody on your team that actually has that expertise. So general advice that you've probably heard before is there's a style that works for you. Marketing, it's not about hard work and producing good results. If you don't tell people what you're doing and somehow publicize it, you're not going to be recognized. Everyone's bright, but time management trumps the majority of efforts. And so what I'd like to suggest is you change your thinking and you consider yourself a startup. This book, The Startup of You, it's actually written by the founder of LinkedIn. It has lots of ideas for how startups should go ahead and get established, all of them applicable to you as a new faculty member. You can read those and see exactly how they fit almost. So finally, takeaways, write your career plan, then go ahead and figure out how you're going to pull out your career proposal. View yourself as a startup. And in terms of time management, if you haven't heard the story about Big Rocks First, go ahead and Google Big Rocks First, and it will tell you nice things about time management, but also about work-life balance, a good strategy. And so I'll stop there and go ahead and turn it back over to Albert.
Perfect. Thank you so much to all of you for the great talk. So we have time for questions from the audience. I know that there are questions in the chat already. Manish, do you want to take over, or Raghu?
Sure. So before we proceed, so thank you to all the panelists for wonderful insight and sharing your experience with us. We have been receiving a lot of questions through Q&A window, and I see panelists are already addressing them. So, but we will be having some audience who will be watching the video as well. So maybe each of the panelists, if you would like to pick any question from the Q&A window, which you would like to address to the other audience as well. Yeah, Irina.
I'll go first and let. So I think there was a question about kind of trying to contact the program director. That's something I've been meaning to talk as well. I think, you know, we have a number of people here saying they had a conversation with program directors. So it's definitely something that if you can get a chance to do that, that's a great thing to do. The specific question about saying that they've been trying to contact them and they sent a number of emails, but really haven't received a response. So I should mention that within NSF, there are different practices of the communication with the PIs. In some parts of NSF, it's actually by design that the program directors kind of unanimously decide not to respond to PI's inquiries because they believe that that's more fair since they cannot necessarily give that kind of attention to every PI. So I do know there are branches within NSF that categorically do not have communication with, and do not respond to white papers. So that's definitely something just to keep in mind. The other thing I would suggest is that, you know, if you're sending an email, make it very easy. And I think that's Dr. Song's response was spot on. Make it very kind of spot on and easy to respond. Here's what I am. Here's a paragraph or maybe a one-pager you attach about my research idea. You know, can I have a chance to talk to you or things like that, or have any specific questions for that? The other suggestion I would say also volunteer to be on the panel. So instead of saying, hey, can you give me advice? You know, you can also just say, here's my resume, here's my few keywords of expertise. I would love to help you with your next panel. So that's something number of, our panelists already talked about that is very helpful. And so that's something to keep in mind. Finally, if you did send one email and they didn't respond a week or two later, please do send a follow-up because we do get very busy, especially now in the virtual world. That's how we communicate predominantly is through emails. It's also okay to pick up a phone and give a call. Some program directors respond better to phone. So even though I'm in my house right now, I have voice over IP on my computer. We all do. And so that also is one way. So again, it's just different program directors, depending on the load or kind of the time of the year, that's something. I will say, if you're contacting us a month before careers due, we will likely not respond because we get a lot of questions. And also we realize that far into submission deadline, anything I'm going to give you is not going to be really much value because you already finished up writing a proposal. You should be very close. Or something that I'm going to share with you is not going to be able to rest in a couple of weeks. So I will say that I have some other programs with deadlines. If it's 2, 3, 4 weeks before the deadline, usually we do not respond to those emails just because of the timing of it. So definitely keep that in mind and start early.
I saw a question about how you decide whether to go for a single PI proposal or a collaborative proposal. I think it's a very tricky thing because if you're asking whether a single PI proposal or a team would be a good idea to answer the questions you have posed, and I think you can arrive at those answers logically through, understanding what you need to understand about writing a good proposal. But if you're asking what's better for a junior faculty member in terms of their career progress, that's between you and your institution, right? Like there is no universal policy on what works best for a junior faculty member to do. So you want to be sure you understand the expectations from your institution. I don't think NSF necessarily views one or the other in a good or a bad way. Irina, please stop me if I'm saying nonsense. But I mean, as long as you form the team to answer the questions you post, I don't think it matters to the NSF one way or the other.
And
So Sarah here on the chat window just asked a question about, could you say more about the educational part of the career? So I would like to answer that. And what would stand out for this one? So one thing that I realized is that, just solicited proposal unsolicited proposal is a little bit different from career. So career proposal is an investment on you as an educator as well as a researcher. So education portion of the career proposal is should not be an afterthought. So when you first trying to draft your career proposal, you should decide how much of the actual papers that you're going to assign to the educational program. And I was trying to ground myself to something that is actually realizable. So I think a lot of people talk about very interesting projects, but I wasn't sure if I could actually pull that off. So I wanted to have a ground study on, what I was proposing first, and then use that as a, pilot study for the educational program that I was proposing in the career proposal. And also keep in mind that it doesn't have to be restricted to K-12, right? So part of my proposal was also talking about the current workforce in the in STEM. When you're using simulation to do your work, how you can actually educate them through the software company that I was working with, Simio. So that was part of the career proposal education plan as well for me.
So I just follow up. I really liked what you said about doing it early before you ever submit your proposal. It used to be that the educational component was, oh, I'm going to develop a graduate course in this area and write a textbook, and those just don't fly anymore. And so, outreach can be many ways. It can be an exhibit at a hands-on museum. It can be developing a PBS video to go ahead and address some issues. And so the more out of the box you think and the more creative you are, then the better your chances are in terms of the educational component really impressing people. So.
Yeah, and I think just adding, it has to be genuine. It has to be clear that this is something you care about. This is something you know about. This is something you've done. So I think that is ultimately really comes through in the proposal, and that excitement and that sincerity comes through, and that's what makes it stand out. So it doesn't have to be whatever it is. It's what makes sense to you.
Great, thank you. Raghu, would you like to ask?
Yeah, I mean, there's still questions in the Q&A. So Sarah is asking, could you say more about the educational part of the career, or what would stand out for this one? So if any one of you can answer of that.
I think that's the one we just answered. Sorry.
We did.
Okay,
We
so
can ask from our pre-prepared.
okay, so I mean, so one of the important sections I believe in the proposal submission is intellectual merit and broader impacts. How important is a section, or how do you address, or what kind of things that we can write in that, or how to write a successful broader impacts or intellectual merit? Can you shed light on it?
Wow, I see everybody wants to go first on that. I believe the correct answer is that both are equally important and both are as important as ever. They are the criteria that NSF uses to judge your proposal. I don't have anything particularly intelligent to say, actually, because I mean that they are the groundstones on which your proposal stands, right? So why is your work novel is what you're going to answer in the intellectual merit section. And the so what, like how is this impacting society is what you're trying to answer in your broader impact section. We talked a bit about education, so maybe I'll just clarify that broader impacts need not be only educational impacts. That might be true for a career proposal where you have to address education explicitly, but in a general NSF unsolicited, broader impacts could mean multiple kinds of education. They could mean mentoring students and other peer faculty members. They could be doing outreach activities. It could be about making some kind of translation of your work in a practical way that could raise somebody's interest in your field or awareness of your field or applications of your field. So there's numerous things you can do in the broader impact section that would somehow show not just the reviewers, right, would actually be a showcase to the world on what the translations of your work could be. If anybody wants to add to that.
David, can I add on, because you said something about career, and I want to make it very, very explicit, especially that now is the time of trying to try careers. So careers require you to have educational part of it. Having that educational part does not automatically satisfy broader impact. That is not, in fact, we tell it to the reviewers and what we want. So just because you're doing all this educational, because remember, career is we're investing in you as a tenure track faculty. Teaching and research are both of your responsibilities. So what we want to know is how you're going to be innovative in both of those things. But in addition, so please, if you're writing career, there should be separate, here's my educational app, integration of research and education impact. It has to be integrated. Like Larry said, writing a textbook does not impress anyone at all. So think about education integrated with research. And then separately, you need to talk about broader impact. And that's where I think what Divya was saying was spot on, how your research would impact, how would it make societal impact? We spend taxpayers' money. Why should they be spending money on this? How is it going to benefit them broadly? Thanks.
So just to follow up, so how do you address diverse feedback that is received on the previous submission? So there could be some reviewer who has said, excellent, very good, and other is saying fair. So how do you address this when you're moving to a revised version?
You just hope for a new panel.
Well, you will get hopefully a new panel. I will. So this is I have a couple of advices on that, and thank you, Manish, to kind of bringing it back. Is that one? First of all, this is another good reason to contact the program director. So if you got a declined proposal, it is perfectly okay. Wait 2 weeks. At least 2 weeks before you contact them. No, do not contact them right after. It takes time to process, to go through the emotional roller coaster of that. And then it's okay to contact program director to say, hey, I have some clarification questions. Can I please talk to you about my declination? Again, don't do it 2 weeks before the new submission, right? The other thing that is important to keep in mind is that if your proposal was discussed in panel, you will also get panel summary. And panel summary is really kind of where the 3 or 5 different reviewers got together and actually had to agree on their strengths and weaknesses. And the panel summary captures that. So when you're looking at the different perspectives from the reviewers, really panel summary is the overriding document in a sense of kind of what ultimately the panel agreed on. The last thing I'll mention here, please, it's not like a paper submission. Please do not go line by line and address every weakness raised by the proposal. Think about it, like Dr. Song was saying, is that when she wrote her career, she shared it with her colleagues. And they gave her all kinds of different feedback. And she didn't go and integrate every single one of them because some of them probably made perfect sense. Like, oh, I never realized this. This is a great point to do. And some of them said like, wow, they didn't read very carefully that paragraph. I already said it like the paragraph before, right? So the same is the reviewers. Read it as an advice and then think which ones make sense or which ones don't, because next time you will get a different panel and they're not going to remember kind of what revisions you've done from before.
Great, thank you. We are still, Albert, do you have any question from your side?
So I'd like the question that was posted, the last one that was posted, which is
Sure.
when coming up with ideas for grants versus papers, how would you scope the ideas? Sometimes you may not be able to see 5 papers down the road on a specific research idea, how would you deal with the uncertainty in scoping? For young faculty, for example, when I'm thinking about my career proposal, it's very hard for me to predict how many papers are going to come out of this. And is it even important to actually do that? To say my career proposal will have 10 papers with it, or?
I'd say no, it's not important. You would hope you would get some publications out of it, so you can credit the award and give NSF, the attribution. But you never know, and you never even know if the research is going to be successful, much less if it's going to be publishable. So it's at the end when you start carving it up into least publishable units to maximize the number of papers. That's when you know how many you get.
Great, thanks.
To add to that, I would say it's more important to think about the overall underlying theme, like the overall theme of the career proposal and how your individual task fit into that. And especially because this is reviewed by a very broad panel, I think it should make sense to everyone that these are part of the same research story.
Raghu, any question from your side?
Yeah, there's still open questions, but we're running out of time. So should we continue or?
I think we have one, which is, what is the best use of IU statement if the PI is from a PUI?
So PUI is primarily undergraduate institutions. So if you're submitting the proposals coming from those institutions, and if you're qualified for that, there's a special official category for that. What happens now, you cannot submit career and PUI at the same time. Like for you, it's to solicitation, you can't like double solicitation of solicitation. So for careers, you would submit a traditional one, kind of a regular career proposal. And I've got a number of questions about whether you have a chance. Absolutely. I really encourage people from kind of primarily graduate institutions to submit careers. We make those awards. But then if you submit kind of a traditional unsolicited proposal from PUI, you get additional document where you get to talk about the impact this award would make on the education and on the graduate students within your university. And that statement is really important because that is where the unique thing that you're bringing in. This is where your proposal will really stand out from other proposals that are coming from institutions where PIs might not have nearly as much interaction and impact on the graduate students, right? So this might be the first grant your institution ever received. This might be the first time undergraduate students even hear what research is about. So again, talk about, like we talk about education, make it genuine, make it something that you've maybe done or something, a passion of yours. I mean, there's a reason you're in a teaching institution, you're hopefully passionate about teaching, right? So talk about that and talk about the great opportunities this will give to your students. And that will really kind of be what will help to raise your proposal and the impact that this award would make. I'm hoping I'm answering the right question.
Yeah, I would just add to what Irina said. There's so many times when I've talked to people and they use as an excuse their current condition. Oh, I'm at an undergraduate institution, so I could never get an NSF research grant. And they don't seem to understand that program directors are much more comfortable with a very diverse portfolio across institution size, geographic areas, et cetera. And so if you think you're disadvantaged, if you can just turn that into an advantage, you're an undergraduate institution. Okay, then you have to do maybe some of the high-powered stuff, but you've got tons of data gatherers and analysts, So turn it into a really positive statement in the proposal, and you'll distinguish yourself. So.
And can I add just to that is that you can also add course buyout to your work, right? If you're coming from that institution, add a course buyout to your budget. Sorry, Manish, I know you're trying.
No. I think this is really awesome. We can stay here for another hour and keep listening to you all guys. I think, but we are running out of time. I think we had a wonderful discussion. So the video will be uploaded on Inform's YouTube channel after some time. And stay tuned. We will be sharing this recording through JFIG, Inform's open forum and other platforms. So again, we really want to thank all the panelists. I would like to thank my co-chairs, Albert and Raghu, for helping in organizing this event. I also would like to thank Chelsea, who is behind the screen and handling all these technical aspects. So with that, thank you everyone, and thanks to the audience for showing up and staying there till the end. And have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you at Inform's annual meeting. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much.